Nau mai, haere mai, welcome. I'm Bruce Munro. With me is International Relations Specialist Professor Robert Patman, and this is Global Insight. Donald Trump's global trade war is the most visible sign of the end of 80 years of international rules-based cooperation and security. Is New Zealand's relationship with the world about to radically change? Welcome, Robert.
Morena, Bruce. Thank you.
Neither the United States nor China is backing down from an escalation of US President Donald Trump's trade tariffs. The US has just increased tariffs on imported goods from China to the US to 125%. And China has vowed to fight to the end. Everything, it seems, is changing. Does New Zealand need to urgently change its relationship with the world?
I think it's in the process of adjusting to what is a tremendous change, and we're not even sure the nature of the change yet. This is literally an unfolding picture. It seems to me there's three possible outcomes, and in the events of the last 24 hours may have shed light on one of those particular. One outcome is that President Trump wins, that his use of tariffs convinces the rest of the world to accept an international economic order in which America is pivotal and everyone does bilateral deals with the United States. In short, that Mr. Trump fulfills his vision of making America great again and taking, as he put it, America's world into a golden new era. There's quite a few reasons why that's unlikely to happen. America is the number one power in the world, but there is a number of other powerful players economically. China, second superpower, and also the EU has got the biggest single market in the world, a formidable economic player, more than close to 500 million, a market of close to 500 million people. So I'm sceptical that's happening. But the second scenario, which we may be seeing today, is the administration backtrack, which is it hasn't backtracked to the point. Today we've learnt that the United States has put its, for those countries which haven't retaliated, it's put its 10%, it's put a pause on tariffs, and I think reduced, indicated that thereafter, if at the end of the 90 days, 10% tariff will be used as the baseline for negotiations. The third option is that the administration crash and burns, and that this will not be, this won't be the first time that a great power has acted unilaterally in the post-Cold War world and found out if it's whether it be the United States in the invasion of Iraq, whether it be the Russian invasion of Ukraine. It's very difficult for even a superpower to overcome the rest of the world. And the rest of the world is not like to accept the diktat. For example, diplomats were openly laughing today at the prospect that when the administration said that it will only escalate against those countries that have actually retaliated to their tariffs. So in short, the formula for resolving this problem is for everyone to grovel around the United States and say, what sort of deal will you offer us? Oh, we'll accept that. Well, that's not realistic for a number of countries. And quite frankly, what we could be looking with the crash and burn scenario, where the rest of the world doesn't accept America's terms for resolution, is a post-American era, where America will find itself more isolated economically than before, and other countries which believe in free trade will do their own thing and just bypass the United States.
The New Zealand government announced this week that it's going to double its defence spending. What does this tell us about this new era that we're entering?
Well, that increase in expenditure was signposted to some degree 2 years ago. But the circumstances, I would say, in the last 3 months have changed radically. And the timing, as the Russians like to say, may be no coincidence. What I would say is that Andrew Little, the former Labour Defence Minister, shortly before the last election in 2023, was envisaging defence expenditure to rise to the sort of level we're now seeing. But 2 years ago, all the talk was about Chinese assertiveness. And that was, a key rationale for New Zealand possibly substantially increasing its defence expenditure. And there was talk about New Zealand joining Pillar 2, possibly joining Pillar 2 of AUKUS. I think the dialogue the debate has completely changed. The New Zealand has taken, in my view, a sensible step in increasing its defence capabilities, but it's not to draw closer to AUKUS. I think that would be a misreading of what the government's doing. If anything, it's become even more difficult after the events since Mr. Trump's been in the White House. It's difficult for a national-led government or any government to move closer to the United States on security grounds, because Mr. Trump has succeeded in both delivering an economic challenge to New Zealand, but also a security challenge for reasons we can go into. But I think what we're seeing is a recognition by New Zealand that it can't rely on the United States and that it needs to invest strongly and more strongly in its own defence sector. Let's be quite clear, New Zealand has underinvested for 2 decades, so this is long overdue. We think the figure will be about 2%. This will be very warmly welcomed in Australia, which is having buyer's remorse over AUKUS. So I think we could be at the beginning of quite an interesting new geopolitical reconfiguration. I think also we could, so to summarise, I think what New Zealand has done is long overdue. It's also a recognition of what is a worsening international situation, and it's a recognition that we can't rely on the United States to help us in that context. It's also a recognition that New Zealand sees security in multilateral terms and that we have to do our bit to contribute to multilateral efforts. And particularly, we have to do more with respect to our closest ally, which is Australia. I think this will be warmly welcome in Australia, and it could even accelerate Australia's thinking about reducing its dependence on the United States in security terms.
Late this week, a cross-party group of high-ranking politicians from New Zealand, including Deputy Prime Minister Winston Peters, left for talks with Pacifica leaders in Tonga, Hawaii and Vanuatu. What is the significance of this?
It's an interesting development. We do know that Mr. Peters as Foreign Minister, and in fact, and I think this is a bipartisan point, this country puts tremendous strategic focus on the Pacific Island nations. We have close people-to-people links, and also it's a region where about more than 60% of New Zealand's development assistance goes. I think there's been very little information about the rationale for the visits to these particular countries, but I think we do know that the government will be concerned by definition about the situation in which the United States, its commitments seem to be unclear, and what's more, it's taken steps that have disadvantaged a number of Pacific Island countries. These are they're almost micro-states, many of them, and many of them are very poor. Fiji in particular has been seriously disadvantaged by the 30% plus tariffs that have been directed its way by Washington. So I think part of the visit will be for Mr. Peters to articulate New Zealand's take on the current situation, probably provide some reassurance, but also I think maybe caution some of the Pacific Island nations against rushing into Chinese arms, given the current situation. So it's very difficult, in all honesty, to know precisely what Mr. Peters, the message he'll be delivering. But we do know this is a region which is number one in terms of our foreign policy priorities. And we will be, I think, trying to set out New Zealand's position in relation to what's happening in geopolitical terms.
Looking at the global changes happening on all fronts, economic, societal, security, what does New Zealand need to do?
Well, that is the burning question, isn't it? And the other thing is it's not settled down yet, Bruce. That's the thing. we can't give a full diagnosis yet to the changes that have occurred because they're still unfolding. What we can see is that New Zealand's two biggest trade partners, the United States and China, are engaging in a trade war. And that's going to have huge headwinds for the New Zealand economy. So I think, as Nicola Willis said this morning, one key lesson to take from this is that we're just going to have to intensify our efforts to diversify. This is something both governments have been doing over the last decade or so. I think it's a bipartisan message. All governments have to, and this government is no exception, diversify our efforts. We have a free trade agreement with the EU, we have a free trade agreement with the UK, we're looking for other free trade, we are looking to develop the relationship with India. All these efforts probably have to be reinvigorated as much as they can. And in a sense, we may be pushing on an open door because countries like Singapore, India must be concerned by what's happening at the moment. So, in other words, the United States, I think, has dealt itself a massive blow to its international reputation in the last few months. And not only has it shown itself to be unreliable in terms of its security commitments, but it's also been unreliable in terms of its commitments to rules-based trade. In fact, it doesn't seem to believe in rules-based trade. What we're witnessing is protectionism. And that, I think, for the New Zealand government, you asked me what should we do? My view is that we should keep up the effort to diversify, but we should reiterate our firm determination to uphold rules-based free trade. Why? Because lots of other countries feel the same way as New Zealand, and that may be a key to opening the door to new markets and new cooperation. So what is very dangerous at the moment may also be an opportunity to, in the long term, for New Zealand to, if you like, extend its influence and hopefully its prosperity in the international arena.
Thank you, Robert. And thank you for watching. Catch us next time on Global Insight. Ka kite anō.